Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about Javon Baker, wide receiver out of Central Florida. Excuse me. We're going to be looking at him in terms of his production profile, how he projects as a prospect, and just other little things about him in terms of his overall production profile. Looking at how I evaluate wide receivers, I look at offensive market share. It's where you take an individual statistic, you divide it by the team total. That is then ranked against positional peers to get a percentile score, and that score is weighted against the age score of a prospect, which gives you offensive market share. Pause the video if you don't already know this information, but this is basically how I get these numbers. When you look at him based on his production profile, he tested decent. His receiving market share score was 69 percentile. His total offensive market share score was in the 59 percentile, and his touchdown market share score was in the 40 percentile. Not the best profile overall. Didn't really hit all the All-Pro averages or Pro Bowl averages at the position. Did hit at least above the starter averages though. And in terms of his efficiency scores, which takes into account things like yards per reception, touchdown percentage, which is the total number of touches divided by total touchdowns. That data is where he did really well too. His yards per reception was incredibly high in the 90 percentile, and his TD percentage was in the 60 percentile. So his efficiency was a lot more impressive than his actual production in terms of market share data. Going on to his adjusted production scores, adjusted production is basically the context for their production. So the MSA score looks at the market share scores that we just looked at, strength of schedule, strength of team, and age score. And then the pass score takes all those numbers I just mentioned and adds the efficiency scores to kind of give you what their overall production is based on their data. And the way, and basically when you look at the projections for him, for Javon Baker, his age score is below average in the 40 percentile. His MSA score was in the 50 percentile, which is not exactly where you want to be. But his pass score was in the 60, basically 69 in terms of his percentile there. So those are actually good numbers to hit in terms of this particular area for him. So I am happy for him in terms of the pass scores, if you will. But he does need to have some improvement. He kind of shows more so up as a starter than anything else based on his production profile. Now, when you look at comparisons for him, so these are some of the wide receivers that compared to Javon Baker based on his overall production profile. Looking at guys like Chad Johnson is probably at the top of the list. Flipper Anderson, Anthony Miller, not junior, the senior, also is in this range. Trey Turner, Malcolm Mitchell, Kason Williams, Andre Wilson, Hunter Sharp, Delaney Walker, and of course Nasimba Webster. Those are all the wide receivers that kind of tested similar to Javon Baker based on his overall production profile. Not a great group to really be in. A lot of the names, again, that are really successful are older names compared to the guys that are on this list right now. But that is kind of the issue with Baker, is his production, again, and his age kind of limits his overall production factors in terms of that. Overall outlook for Javon Baker. Baker profiles as a potential Pro Bowl to backup wide receiver based on his data. His biggest weakness is the overall production traits and his age. But there are some outliers who tested in the same area as Baker in terms of Chad Johnson and Anthony Miller. And the one thing I can tell you about Javon Baker is his route running is very good. Anybody who's watched his film knows he has the ability to get separation. And when he actually is on fire, he's incredible as a route runner. But again, it's not always the most consistent thing that you see on film from him. So I think the biggest thing for Baker is this. I think if you look at him as a potential backup to starter, I think you're going to win with that kind of projection. If you see him as something more like a Chad Johnson or Anthony Miller type, like a Pro Bowl type wide receiver, he would really have to be an outlier to kind of reach those areas of his overall data. But is it a possibility? Absolutely. Especially in today's NFL, there's a lot of wide receivers who didn't really have the best production, but ended up being pretty decent. But that's kind of how Baker profiles as a prospect. Good, not great, but definitely worth a shot or worth a view in terms of this overall wide receiver class. With all that stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching this channel. My name is Jim Coburn, also known as Geometrics on Twitter at JIMTRICS. You can also follow me on my Patreon page, patreon.com/jcoburn, JCOBERN. And with all that stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!